Kayun can open the room now.
Baik Mas, sudah Mas.
Okay. I'll pass it to Dr. Juwita.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our energy webinar entitled Electric Vehicle Adoption in Southeast Asia, co-organized by
Recording in progress.
and stratsea. My name is Juwita Mohammed, and I will be your moderator for today. Just for your information, the speakers in this webinar will present insights on regulations and consumer sentiments on EV in Southeast Asia specifically. In collaboration with various organizations, stratsea has kickstarted 2025 with a webinar series on energy. So this is the second of the 3 webinars planning to be executed. And the aim of these webinars are to ignite conversations, and specifically for this one, to ignite conversations and discussions on EV adoptions, EV car adoptions, and challenges faced on the ground by various stakeholders. So we will hear more about Tara's Institute in a bit. But before that, let me introduce to you all stratsea. Stratsea is an online platform that showcases analysis and also insights by Southeast Asian experts and also professionals. The contributors come from different countries in Southeast Asia, and they offer localized assessments on global, regional, as well as national issues that impact the region. So in doing so, they provide quality analysis from Eastern lenses or from the Global South lens that enrich conversations about the region and its people. They cover a wide range of topics like education, environment, mental health, politics, renewable energy, violent extremism, among others. So do check out stratsea's website for more information on these publications. So stratsea is made up of a small but very mighty team. The chief editor is Mr. Sham Ismail, and the editor is Muhammad Sinatra, while the project manager is Aryan Yasmin. I myself am a proud fellow at stratsea. As mentioned before, today, Tara's Institute is a partner for today's webinar. It is a research initiative focusing on sustainable development in Indonesia. The organization aims to accelerate the adoption of renewable energy through innovation, research, marketing, as well as fundraising. Now, let's get the ball rolling. I would like to invite our presenter today, Mr. Reza Edriawan. Mr. Reza is a professional in the energy transition and sustainability space. He is now an energy cooperation officer at the ASEAN Center for Energy. His works involve the implementation of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, an energy cooperation blueprint that is endorsed by all ASEAN member countries, especially its energy ministers. He has a thorough experience working in the energy transition space in Indonesia, and had previously worked to lead the development of various renewable energy specific areas across Indonesia. He has also worked in Europe to support bilateral relationships between Indonesia and business leaders with the UK government and private sectors. So he's also an advocate to advance sustainability transition for all. Mr. Reza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Juwita. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I think I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juwita. So I'm Reza, currently working for the ASEAN Center for Energy, the one and only intergovernmental organization in Southeast Asia for ASEAN that spearhead our energy cooperation, mainly in the energy transition space. But today I'll be talking more about sustainable mobility in ASEAN, something that has been one of the key issues that we have here in Southeast Asia, to try to transition away from the emitting, the polluting ICE that we have today. So this is just a very, very short presentation. There will be two separate part of the presentation. And so the first part would be just about the context about sustainable mobility or current transport sector in ASEAN. So I'm just going to give you a little bit taste about what we do in the ASEAN Center for Energy. We just recently published the 8th ASEAN Energy Outlook, our biannual publication that is directed and guided directly by the Energy Minister of ASEAN. And what we found is that the transport sector is the second largest energy consumers in ASEAN, just below the industrial sector. And of course, transition in this space will require more than just energy transition. But I'm just going to start with the energy sector perspective here. So on the left, you can see the growth in the energy consumption of the transport sector. So if we don't do anything by 2050 or the business as usual scenario, we will have our energy consumption grow from 145 MTOE to 375. And the rest of the graph there, so you see ATS is the current ASEAN target scenario. So these are the targets that ASEAN has announced they will achieve by 2050. So we will see a reduction of just a fraction to 228. Further, if we go to RAS or the regional aspiration scenario, this is the aspiration or target that ASEAN said they want to achieve, but hasn't seen to be announced officially in the form of any policy. We can increase that to almost half. And that amount is more or less similar to the carbon neutral scenario, CNS. So my key takeaway here is that the aspiration of the 10 ASEAN member states is more or less already in line with the carbon neutrality scenario, although there is some ASEAN member state that is yet to have any net zero target. So even if we don't have like a common net zero target by certain year in the future, our current aspiration in the energy sector at least is already in line with carbon neutrality. So if you can see here in the carbon neutrality scenario or CNS by 2050, almost half of the energy consumption of the energy sector will come from electricity, 48%, but we also see still 20% of oil. So we think that there are lots of vehicles, a lot of subsector within the transport sector that is very, very hard to be decarbonized. So we still need oil in there. But we also see that we will need other form of energy in the form of hydrogen and also biofuel. And the 12% of biofuel includes both the biofuel for vehicle and also sustainable aviation fuel or SAF. So these are basically what we are trying to achieve by 2050, to achieve net zero, to achieve carbon neutrality. And to achieve that, the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or what we call the APAC, something that agreed and endorsed and developed by all the ASEAN energy ministers, sort of what we do every single day, has already see transport sector as something that is very, very important. However, it is still under the what we call the program area number 4, the ENC, the energy efficiency and conservation. So the transport sector is still seen in the energy sector at least under the energy efficiency and conservation measure. So the efficiency in transport is one of the key outcome-based strategy that we have, and the activity includes capacity building and also information sharing. So if you can see here, the ENC program area, there's got ranges of strategy with self labeling, FI inclusion, building, energy management, transport. So this is just a little bit taste about what we are expecting next year. As you can see, the APAC Phase 2 2021-2025 will end this year. So we are thinking to sort of have a better, more comprehensive strategy in the transport sector, as well as the industrial sector, building sector, and other sector that consumes lots of energy. But I think there is some shift from 10 years ago that the ASEAN member states have seen the transport sector as something that we need to be serious about to achieve energy transition. So that's just a little bit about the energy sector perspective about transport sector. one important thing is that in 2023, the ASEAN summit in Labuan Bajo, Indonesia, adopted the ASEAN Leaders Declaration on developing regional EV ecosystem. So if you're not 100% familiar with how ASEAN works, we're not the EU that has an energy that has a European Commission that has a representative from each member country. So we don't have that. So the ASEAN Summit, or the Leaders Summit, some might call it, is the highest convening that we have in ASEAN. So this is where all the 10 ASEAN leaders, presidents, prime ministers, convene together and discuss and adopt something. And when ASEAN say they adopt something, it means that we have agreed on something, and we want to implement that to the future. And this adoption of this declaration has six major steps. The first is to affirm the significant role of EV in reducing emission, accelerating the transition, and all that. The second is the commitment of all ASEAN member states to develop a regional EV ecosystem. So this includes a continued support to all ASEAN member states, develop a global hub for production, sustainable economic growth, and all other commitments. The third is to encourage harmonization, and this is harmonization more on the standard. So we want to have sort of like almost a single market within ASEAN. So whatever you produce in, say, Vietnam can be utilized here in Indonesia, in Singapore, in the Philippines. It makes a regional hub of production easier if you have that harmonization. The fourth is to agree on the export cooperation for EV. This is within the ASEAN member states. The fifth is to promote external partnership with other dialogue partners, with international organizations, financiers that can support us in this. And the second is start the ASEAN economic community. Again, if you're not familiar with how ASEAN work, there will be lots of abbreviation in here. But ASEAN economic community is basically the second pillar of the three community pillars within ASEAN. The first one is security, for the second. The second is economy. The third one is social. So it tasks the whole economic community of ASEAN to implement this declaration.
Recording in
Conveniently,
progress.
by the way, for ASEAN, supported by the scoping study of the ASEAN Asia Mineral Cooperation, which recognized the opportunity in critical minerals. So if you can see on the left, this is a study from IIST, you can see the immense opportunity that ASEAN has in terms of critical minerals that is required for EV production or energy transition more broadly. So you can see Indonesia, you can see Thailand, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam. Almost everyone has something on critical minerals that can be utilized to accelerate our growth, our sustainable growth in this space. And if you can see on the right, is that the growth that we have seen on the production of these critical minerals. You can see nickel growth twofold, the manganese, rare earth go 25-fold, tungsten, aluminium, iron, bauxite, copper. So everything here is very, very much needed in energy transition, not only for EV production, but also for renewable energy development. So ASEAN has been trying to utilize our opportunity in this space. So these are the current status of where we are in terms of us as a region towards sustainable development, especially in the transport sector towards EV. So we already have a declaration, the ASEAN leaders have already agreed. We know that the energy consumption will grow in the future, so we need to think about that. And then we know that we have an opportunity very, very high in the supply chain, very, very early in the value chain that we need to utilize further. So I'm just gonna continue my presentation in the second part, which is the pathway ahead. So number one, I think we are made for cooperation. The region is made for cooperation, and a comprehensive integration is something that we can do. From the very left, Singapore is very, very, very good in R&D activities, not only in the technological R&D, but also in whenever there is an international company coming to the region. Most of the time, they will start open shop firstly in Singapore. as a financial hub of Southeast Asia, even Asia. So this is something that has been growing in the past few years. However, of course, Singapore with its high minimum wage is not necessarily something that is very reliable if we wanted to take things to scale up. So we can see how Johor and Singapore create a special economic zone. One of the reasons is to address this issue as well. So we saw also opportunity for Manila, for Jakarta, for Bangkok as well to think about how they can have more international companies set up shop in their places. The second is supply chain. So I think from the previous slide, Indonesia and the Philippines hold the most essential minerals, nickels and cobalt. So this is something that we really need to think about how we can utilize that. We are still working to increase our domestic value. You can see Indonesia with the downstreaming policy is something that other countries in ASEAN is also thinking about and wanting to do to ensure that we can have the most out of this opportunity. The third one is production. So Vietnam currently is a leading ASEAN in production, especially with FinFast. I think in Jakarta, we have seen several FinFast vehicles running around. They also make electric buses. So these are something that ASEAN needs to promote more. And the thing is, we are yet to see similar scale happening in other ASEAN countries, but Vietnam. So this is something that ASEAN as a region needs to learn from each other as well. The fourth one is regulation. This is something talk about the harmonization. So we need to strengthen our regulation to do harmonization to ensure that we as a region can develop as a almost a single market. I'm not going to say one single market, almost a single market, and one supply chain value chain that we can develop together. The fifth one is market. So definitely ASEAN is a very big market. So by 2040, the Bloomberg Net estimated that we will sell 2.7 million EVs, or 56%, more than half of the new vehicle being sold that year in the region. But the highest share now is still in Singapore at 2.5%. And 2.5% in Singapore is winner compared to Indonesia, compared to Malaysia, the Philippines. It's not the number that we want to see in the next few years. So the rest of ASEAN is very negligible, especially compared to the other part of the world like China, the US, Europe. So this is something that I think we are yet to see enough growth in the very downstream of the market. So this is something that we need to think about comprehensive integration between the 10 Southeast Asian countries. The second option or the second idea that we can do is through the international cooperation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ITMOs or the Internationally Transferred Mitigation Outcomes. It's part of the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement for bilateral cooperation for reducing emissions. So this is something that the Thailand government and the Swiss government has done back, I think, a couple of years ago. So Thailand will shift their ICE buses, public buses, to electric buses. So they will shift that. They will do the transition, but they need the money. So they ask the Swiss government for the money, and the Swiss government will give them the money to switch from the ICE buses to electric buses. But the emission reduction that comes from the shift from ICE to electric will be transferred from Thailand to Switzerland. So when we have this annual COP meetings where everyone are reporting the INDC, Thailand will not report that they will have reduced this amount of emission because they shift from ICE buses to electric buses. But the Swiss will claim that they will purchase sort of like a carbon credit, or the emission credit that Thailand has been able to reduce, right? So this is just one of the many mechanisms that has been going around the world about carbon credit. The difference between other carbon credit like CCM, the voluntary carbon market, and ITMO is that ITMO is well managed, guided, and supervised by the UNFCCC. So this is the UN body that oversee the climate issue, the annual COP as well. So they have set up this sort of like carbon market arrangement to ensure that countries bilaterally can work together to reduce the emission. So 1.5 million tons of CO2 will be transferred. There are already 69 bilateral agreements under the Article 6 of Paris Agreement, this ITMO. But Thailand and Swiss is the first one in Asia, especially, that is already going ahead with the implementation phase. $100 million is expected to be sort of like the value. 500,000 ITML, so there are 500,000 ITML, 1.5 million tons of CO2. So there are some guidelines on how to calculate this emission. And there will be 4,000 electric buses deployed in Bangkok metropolitan region to replace the existing ICE. So this is just one of the, I would say, creative way or available ways for ASEAN to actually access the international funding that we desperately need to transition away from the ICE vehicles to electric vehicles. And one last thing is that I think we earlier discussed about the current market of ASEAN that is not yet take up for EV. So one of the reasons for that is the what I call the institutional inertia within the legacy manufacturer here in Southeast Asia. They've been doing ICE for all that for as long as we can remember. It would be very, very hard for them to actually transition from making ICE to making electric vehicle. Maybe that's also why we see a lot of new brands coming into the region for EV. But this is just sort of like what I call a creative policy making made in the US by the Californian government back in the day about the zero emission vehicle credit mechanism. So basically, all manufacturers in California now, more than I think 20 states in the US, they are subjected to meet a targeted zero emission vehicle percentage of their annual sales. So for example, in 2018, they have to sell 4.5% of the new vehicle they sell have to be zero emission vehicle. In 2023, it was 17%. And by 2035, it is targeted to be 100%. And whenever you are selling an EV or a zero emission vehicle for that matter, you will have a credit, like ZEV credit, what they call it. So if the all electric range is more than 350 miles for one vehicle, then you have 4 credits. If it's between 50 to 350 miles, you calculate the IER and get your credit. And this applies as well for traditional ZEV or they call or hybrid vehicle. So you get sort of like a credit whenever you as a manufacturer sell a zero emission vehicle to the market. And each year you will have a target to achieve certain amount of credit. So just for example, you need to achieve say 100 credits per year, and then every time you sell an EV to the market, you will have maybe 3 or 4 credits, and then you will calculate that, and by the end of the year you will report to the government. Okay, this is how much credit I have made. And if there is a nexus, so if you make more than what you are required to have by the end of the year, you can bank those credits to be utilized for next year, for the next cycle, or you can sell that to other manufacturers. So for example, Tesla, they only sell EV, right? They only sell pure ZEV. So whenever they sell an EV or a vehicle to the market, they'll get credit, and mostly maximum credit, 4 credits. So you can imagine if the target is only 4.5%, and then you sell 100%, you have lots and lots of excess in credit that you can bank for next year. But I don't think Tesla needs to bank it next year because they will make more credits than they were required to, again, right, every single year until 2035. And this excess credits, they can sell to other manufacturers. So in 2021, for example, Mazda bought this almost 11,000 of this credit from Tesla because Mazda doesn't sell enough zero emission vehicle. Tesla made more. So this transaction happened over the counter. Tesla and Mazda discussed the fee. Sometimes they disclose the value. Sometimes they don't. The government doesn't really care, so they can just do the transaction. So these are the kind of policy making that the ASEAN countries can use to sort of provide further incentive for the legacy manufacturer. So at the very bottom, you can see the revenue of Tesla just from the ZEV credit. So this is just from ZEV credits, like almost almost $2 trillion this year just because of ZEV credit. They publish the quarterly report tomorrow, so we'll see how much they actually pay. But it's projected to be around $2 trillion just from the ZEV credits, not from the actual sales of the EV itself. And in the early years from 2012 to 2020, these are the main source of revenue when Tesla doesn't make money from the car they sold, the EV they sold. So they may make money from this ZEV credits, and that what kept them going until today. If there wasn't this EV credit mechanism provided by the Californian government, I don't think we will see Tesla as it is today. So these are the kind of policy making that can be utilized as well by the ASEAN membership to help our market to transition away from ICE to EV. So I think I'm gonna stop there. Thank you very much. I'm gonna give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reza, for that very informative and insightful presentation. I would like to invite our discussant, Mr. Fitra Eri to give his inputs. But before that, let me introduce Mr. Fitra to the audience. Mr. Fitra is a renowned Indonesian race car driver. He's also a journalist and an internet personality. He co-founded Autodriver in 2015 and currently serves as its editor-in-chief. So under his leadership, Autodriver has become a leading automotive media platform where Fitra's engaging and informative content significantly contributed to Autodriver's success. He has a massive online following of about 3.07 million subscribers on YouTube and about 1.5 million followers on Instagram. So in addition to his role within the automotive journalism, he has a distinguished racing career. He has won three the Indonesian touring car race, 1,500 championship for 3 consecutive years, and finishing second in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia 2014. So he is a man of many hats, very influential. So Mr. Fitra, could I invite you to comment on the presentation made just now? What is your take on the insights given by our speaker? The floor is yours, Mr. Reza. Mr.
Hi,
Fitra?
Hi, Juwita. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, pardon my English. Maybe my English will not be as good as Mr. Reza. And actually, I'm very proud having Reza here. Reza shared the same high school and same college with me. But it's clear that he studied more serious than what I did back then. But it's okay. I'm a car lover. I'm a car journalist because I'm a car lover. So I chose my job because of my passion. And actually, I was the one who were really worried about the electric vehicle because for us, the petrol head, we call it, electric car doesn't have the same excitement as the internal combustion one. There's no sound from the engine, there's no vibration, there's no feeling that the engine is struggling to get power, something like that. But I know the Earth needs to be, what they say, we need to have a blue sky because of what we did for 100 years. So let me talk about the birth of the electric car or internal combustion car. Actually, making an EV, electric car, is much easier than the internal combustion engine. In EV, you just need electricity. You put it, you store it in the battery, and then the battery drives the motor. That's it. Compared to internal combustion engine, you need to have pistons, you need to have connecting rod, you need to have the metallurgy technology to convert the energy from the fuel into the kinetic energy. It's much more complicated than that. Then why do we have an internal combustion engine at the first place? Actually, electric vehicle have is already there since 1830, I think. So it's way earlier than the internal combustion engine. They use it for the coal because electric motor doesn't consume precious energy in the coal mining. So yeah, we can make EV since 1800, but people find it more convenient and more cheaper to run private mobility or private car with fuel, because we have a lot of fuel, we have a lot of oil, and it's easier to refuel the car, and it's cheaper. So people chose to burn dead dinosaurs over the electric vehicle for over 100 years. And then at the 21st century, we started to worry about the quality of the air because of the pollution that internal combustion made. So the government all around the world gather, and they have planned how to make our earth green again or blue again. And then they come up that vehicle, they make they contribute the pollution very high. And then one way that we can reduce the pollution of our earth is by having electric vehicle on our road. So they began. So like Mr. Reza said, even us as Asian also have planned to support the EV ecosystem in our region. And now it's working, I think. I mean, the growth of the sales of EV in Southeast Asia is exponential. Okay, the number is still small, but the growth is exponential. So it is because of the government regulation. In Indonesia, we have a tax reduction for the EV, and we also have the some advantages that if you drive internal combustion engine, you don't get, like in Indonesia, in Jakarta, we have odd and even plate number regulation. So, but if you are driving EV, doesn't matter what date you're driving, you can drive your EV. So, and then the annual tax of EV in Indonesia is 0. And now people are becoming more and more believe in EV because they already tried EV. They know how convenient it is just to charge EV at home, and it is very cheap to run. And now the growing in Indonesia is really good. Still, we have more less than 10% of sales of EV in Indonesia, but they are growing. But for me, there's also a threat for the EV, not only in Indonesia but also in the world. In Indonesia, we have a short-term threat and long-term threat. The short-term threat is just the EV in Indonesia have a very bad resale value. Maybe it will not be happening in Singapore. Singapore, the new car price is already high because of the COE, and then after 5 or 10 years, we have to scrap the car. But in Indonesia, we sell our car. Even after 5, 6, 7, 10 years, we will sell our car, and the EV resale value is very, very bad. That's drop in price very significantly. And that's also because of the people worry about the price of the battery when they have to replace the battery, because the battery will eventually broken. Nah, and then there's also the they worry about how expensive the battery will be when it has to be replaced. and then there's a lot of Chinese car entering the market, very good quality car, very fast, very beautiful, very luxurious, and very cheap. And they have a very short life cycle. Only 2 years, they change model. Every 2.5 years, they change model. So people are, because people will buy the car as long as they give advantage to them. And then they started to think, if I buy now, maybe in just 2 years, my car will feel obsolete, and then I cannot sell my car unless I sell it for a very, very cheap price. The concern is now growing. Then it will be bad if people don't want to buy electric car anymore because of the resale value and the high cost of replacing the battery. And then furthermore, the EV regulation, the full EV regulation starting in 2030 or 2035 was initiated by European mostly, the European manufacturer, the European government, and now they gave up. They cannot compete with the China car. And then it's sad that some of the manufacturers, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, even BMW, now they announced that they will still make internal combustion engine for more years. They don't give the limit when they stop to produce internal combustion engine. So it will be bad for us as the inhabitant of Earth that needs to have a clean air, because it's all about the money. They will make our Earth green as long as they can make money. When they cannot make money, it's their first priority is to save their money. They cannot make EV. They cannot compete with China, and the only way to have a sustainable business, that they have to produce internal combustion engine. So not only in Asian, but in ASEAN also, in the world also, we need regulation to make sure the competitive, sorry, pardon me. So we need to have a regulation to ensure the fair competitiveness between each manufacturers. So they can provide us with more EVs, and they don't have to make internal combustion engine again. Because if the situation is still like now, then in 2035, 2040, then people don't want to buy other car brand other than China brand, because China is so cheap, so good. And with EV, there's no difference between driving a China brand and let's say BMW, Mercedes, or Rolls-Royce, because the drivetrain feels the same. It's electric. When we still have internal combustion engine, it feels different driving a BMW or driving a Toyota, Daihatsu, or a Geely. Now, the difference is not disappearing, because they feel the same, and then China have a very cheap labor cost, and then the government of China also give subsidize the manufacturer to if they sell the car outside China. So yes, we need to have EV, because the oil is now is reducing, but we also have to think about the business point of view. We will not have full EV if the condition is still like this. So yeah, that's my take. I'm a petrolhead. I have EVs also. I like EV to have to be my daily mobility, and I'm hoping that 90% of the car on the road will be EV, so it will be clean. But as a petrolhead also, I still hoping that they will continue to produce the internal combustion engine, but only for the niche market like the V8, V10, something like that. But for most of us, 90% of us, we need to commute. We need to move by electric energy because it's a sustainable energy, and we will save our Earth if we can commute with electric energy. But I don't think it will happen if there's no change in regulation for now.
Thank you, Mr. Fitra, for that very frank input. We already have a few questions from the floor, but let me just do a follow-up with the both of you with some probing questions. So, Mr. Reza, you've heard what Mr. Fitra has said about EV adoption. What about ASEAN members' policy direction? Do you think the ASEAN member countries themselves, do you think their policy direction on the ground is currently sufficient to support not just EV adoption among consumers, but also to promote EV market growth in ASEAN? So, Mr. Reza, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Jita. I think one thing that struck me from Bang Fitra's mentioning was about how to make money out of it. I feel like we especially we have been working, we as someone has been working in sustainability space for so long, people that is coming out of uni to go for sustainability for so long, we sometimes forget that the main reason for people to do this is to make money. Whatever space that you are doing, whether that's energy, fuel, or power sector, or even transport, at the end of the day, you have to make money out of it. And sometimes people forget about that. So at the current state, lots of legacy manufacturer in ASEAN, especially, are not able to make money from the EV production. They've been making money. They've been taking revenues all from the ICE production with good marketing capability. They're very good on the ground. They understand the market. So they've been doing that for so long now. But they're not able to make money with the transition to EV, and hence why a lot of other manufacturer, multi-Chinese manufacturer, coming to the region to make that. And yes, it is up to the government to see to solve this problem, I would say. On one side of the coin, it would be okay for the government to just do as how market would define that. So it's just a market, be a free market, and see how this legacy manufacturer will compete with this new manufacturer of EV, and see who wins in the market. Like basically, laissez-faire, the free market arrangement, basically. But what we don't want to have is that for this legacy manufacturer to also not be able to compete completely in a very short period of time. Yes, if we let the free market roll on in this region, we will have more EV, good for energy transition, yada yada. But this legacy manufacturer houses lots and lots of jobs in this region as well. This is something that we cannot forget as well. If we let this say free market arrangement let it run very swiftly, very swiftly sweep out all the legacy manufacturers to new manufacturer of EV, there are 100,000 of jobs waiting on the sideline that they don't know what to do, right? And these are the people in the most productive of age. So this is the dynamic that the government is currently working on. How can you balance the energy transition, not necessarily just in transport sector, but also with the just transition and sustainable growth for all? One of the ways to do it, as I mentioned, is to sort of like what I call a creative policy making on how you can get incentive to the legacy manufacturer to help them to transition. So not necessarily picking winners, but giving them more incentive so they have more breathing space to do the transition. What the Californian ZEV kind of mechanism allow is to give almost 15 years for all the manufacturers to do the transition. They started for 4.5% of the target, growing to 17, 20% until 100% by 2025. So it gives a breathing space of 15 years, more or less, give or take, for the legacy manufacturer to figure out how they want to do stuff. Over time, the incentive will grow to do more EV, but it doesn't necessarily to just give all the incentive at once now, because the impact would be good in terms of EV adoption, but we kind of perfect in terms of economic growth. So these are the kind of stuff that the ASEAN policymakers are thinking. We are yet to have sort of like what I usually call best practices in ASEAN, how one country has done it very, very well. We are yet to have that. We are exploring partnership with other countries out there, Western countries, Asian countries, China, Japan, Europeans, the US, even South American countries as well. So we are working on how we can make this work for ASEAN. We know from the lessons learned from other countries that it can work. It works in the US, it works in Europe, it works in China especially. But we also know that in other countries there are some lessons learned, there are some pain imposed to the market, to the workers as well. And we don't want that to happen in ASEAN, especially as we are entering our sort of like a golden age of sustainable growth, of continuous development that we have in ASEAN. So I'll leave it. I think I'll leave that to it for now.
Thank you for that very insightful comment. Mr. Fitra, let's talk about the uptake of EV vehicles in Indonesia, but also in Malaysia. Why do you think is there a low adoption rate here in these countries and also in the region? You mentioned that there are perceptions about the cost of batteries. What can be done by governments to ensure that there's more uptake for EV vehicles in Malaysia, Indonesia, and also the region?
Thank you, Juwita. So, first time EV coming into Indonesia, the people worriness was not about the cost of the battery, but will it run safely if I drive through the flood because it's battery, it's electric, I might get electrocuted. So that's because they don't know anything about EV. But I always said to my friend that is skeptical to EV. So imagine that if we don't use the internal combustion engine, let's say that we make EV since 1900 till now, and then now suddenly they found oil and then they make internal combustion engine. Would you be more skeptical to the internal combustion engine because there are thousands of mechanical parts that can be broken at any time, compared to the EV that is very simple, the battery, the motor, the control unit? We already passed that in maybe that happened in 2020 until 2022, but through the education from the media, from the manufacturer, people believe that electric vehicle is safe, it's easy to use, and it's practical. And then some of early adopters, including me, started to buy EV in 2020, 2021. And then from mouth to mouth, we told other people how convenient it is to use EV. It's cheap and it's practical. They already they always worry about the range. How's the range? What if I run out of electricity in the middle of the road? I cannot just spend 5 minutes to refuel like the internal combustion engine. I have to wait for hours. But we said that it's just a change of habit. Instead of going to the fuel station to refuel, you just plug your car at home, you just sleep, and then in the morning, the car will be full of energy again, and then you can continue going. And then now we already passed all of that. People are now educated about the electric vehicle. Electric vehicle is cheaper to run, it's practical, it's safe. But now we are facing another problem from the customers. They are now worried about the price of the battery when they have to replace the battery. How long is the battery life? Manufacturer now give 8 years of warranty for the battery, and then they get worried. What if I use the car after 8 years? How much money will I have to spend if the battery die? Because we don't know anything about that. Even me, I don't know anything about that. I don't know exactly what when the battery is going to die, and then how much is it in the future to replace the battery? Because maybe in 10 or 15 years in the future, the car model has already changed, and the car that I have that needs to get the battery replaced or already out of production, will they still sell the battery? We don't know anything about that. So we need more education, especially from the manufacturers. We need them to be more open. So now the battery price is this much. And then we already conduct the test. The battery usually will last for how many years? We don't know about that. That's why when people buy electric vehicle in Indonesia, it's easy to buy in Indonesia. It's really easy. It's now cheap and supported by government regulation, have many advantages, but it's hard to sell the electric car in a used condition, especially after 3 or 4 years. So yes, we need to, but time will tell. We cannot do anything, frankly, about that. We just need to wait. It's like we are new. We all new to the electric vehicle, so it's normal that we have many skepticism from the people, but it is what it is. But the main thing is we need to ensure that every manufacturer has the fair regulation from the government to compete each other. In America, in USA, I heard that they add taxes for China car selling in the United States because they just cannot compete if the tax is the same. I don't know whether we should make that radical move, but we need to ensure that people, especially from the manufacturer side, can make money from EV, because there's no use. We have regulation if they cannot sell EV. EV need to be bought by people, and it will be good if people have a lot of choices of EVs. Yes, we have skepticism from the consumers, but also we are facing a problem of the inequality of the of the what to say, persaingan di pasar itu, it's not that fair between the old manufacturer and the new China manufacturer. We need to address that along with the skepticism of the people concerning the battery replacement and the durability of EV.
Okay, thank you, Pak Fitra, for your answer. Mr. Reza, I want to a bit about prices for electricity and its impact on the EV market. So, for example, in countries like Malaysia, where we're trying to shift away from fossil fuel energy into renewable energy, the government of Malaysia has announced a few electricity price hikes. If other countries also increase their prices for electricity in the next few years, how do you see will this impact the EV industry, and what does it mean for the ASEAN-wide plan to develop regional EV ecosystem in the backdrop of climate change?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Juta. Very good question. I just got back from Langkawi, Malaysia, actually last week for the senior official meeting on energy, and we discussed more or less on energy transition, and that kind of stuff always came up, right? How about the affordability? How about the accessibility? So whenever we're talking about energy transition, we don't necessarily talk only about the emission, but also about the basic essential services that the energy sector provision to the people. And there are lots of thinking about how the price hike imposed by the energy transition will affect the market, will affect the people. I'm not 100% sure that currently people are actually thinking that if the power, if the cost of power rises up, it will impact my utilization of my EV or my transport. I don't think we are yet in that stage. We are still thinking that transport sector is a separate discussion with the power sector, right? Because most of the use of power is not necessarily for the transport sector, and transport sector is using other form of fuel. So I don't think we are necessarily have priced that into the discussion, and definitely that's something that we need to discuss in the future. But for me, I think, well, this is a personal view on this, is that I don't think we will really think about EV when we have our energy prices go up, right? Whenever there is a price hike in the energy, whether that's for fuel, whether that's for power, we don't necessarily think about how we can drive our car to the office. What we think is that, can I afford the next groceries with this price hike? A very different dynamic, right? But of course, I think in the future, if we can maintain the current growth that ASEAN have built upon in the past decade, I would say, there will be a shift in thinking that the energy provision by the government for the people is not necessarily will play more part in people's life, including in transport sector for the EV, for example. We are still thinking about how we can price that in terms of policy in the regional scale as of now. But I think one thing that has already always come up whenever we talk about energy affordability, security, and stability is about interconnectivity between ASEAN countries. So we are talking about interconnectivity, not necessarily in terms of supply chain or value chain, but an actual infrastructure that connects us together. So one of the main infrastructure project in ASEAN is what we call the ASEAN Power Grid, the APG. This is something that we've been discussing since the 1990s, right? But we have just got our first partial APG working in the past couple of years, the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore line. And this has, well, studies suggest that this has helped the four countries, the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, LTMS, we call it, with their energy security, affordability, and stability as well. And there are lots of discussion just last week about how we can do more about this interconnectivity, right? And this has been one of the biggest priority of Malaysia currently as the chair of ASEAN. And we want to expand that even more. Because again, I don't think we are in the stage where people are actually linking the energy transition, the power sector into the transport sector in more sort of like not necessarily the primary basic services that they need. But we are moving in that to that direction. And I feel like interconnectivity between ASEAN, the cooperation between ASEAN countries will be essential in ensuring that we can address this issue, we can address this challenges moving forward. So I think I'll leave it to it.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So we have a lot of questions from the floor. These two questions are for Pak Fitra. It's a practical question on EV and motorbike choices. So Pak Fitra, the question goes, I have a Kawasaki Ninja that I'm considering to swap with an EV motorbike as I'm moving to a more crowded area. Do you think that's a wise move? That's question number one. Question number two is, Vespa's EV model is 10 times more expensive than the Chinese products in the market. Do you think a Vespa can capture the market share? And why do you think Vespa sets its price so high, even higher than its standard ICE models? Those two questions are for
Okay. Okay. First of all, there's quite difference between the motorcycle, EV motorcycle, and EV in form of car. The battery technology is so different. The battery in EV electric vehicles, such as car, they have a cooling system, they have the heating system, they make the battery as durable as possible, but not in motorcycle. Some of the consumer reported that the battery in motorcycles only lasts maybe 2 or 3 years, and the range of the motorcycle, EV motorcycle, is very low. Many of them just below 100. So converting your Kawasaki Ninja to EV motorcycle, it depends. Do you love riding? Do you love? Are you a freak motorcyclist? No, not a freak. I mean, you're a fanatic motorcyclist. If so, then don't convert. Just buy another one just for your daily commute. Keep your Ninja. It's a nice bike, by the way. Buy another one. There's a cheap one to commute. You don't have to buy EV motorcycle as expensive as your Ninja. Now we have a lot of cheap electric motorcycle. Don't expect to have a good range or durability, but surely it will help your running costs, everyday running costs if you use electric bike. Just keep your Ninja for the weekend. Use electric motorcycle for the weekdays. And then for the Vespa, I think not only EV, even the internal combustion engine Vespa already much more expensive than the other brand, especially let alone the China brand. So yeah, Vespa not selling the motorcycle, they sell the lifestyle. So they're not entering the EV market to compete with the China EV motorcycles, but they just give the people who wants Vespa another choice. So you don't buy Vespa EV because you need an EV motorcycle. You buy Vespa EV because you need a Vespa, but you want to choose the EV one. So I think that's
Okay, thank you. I hope that was useful for the audience before he or she makes her choice. Mr. Reza, we have a question for you on your presentation. So in your presentation, you mentioned that Indonesia and the Philippines can become the main producers of crucial parts for EVs within the ASEAN market. How will this then affect the environment within the country, as the prediction of the amount of EV will eventually impact the production, and then when there's high production, then this will also be followed by higher emissions. What is your take on that? So this is a good question on balancing production vis-a-vis emissions.
Yes, of course. I think the question about how we will manage sustainability of the production of an EV or whatever system that we'll want to produce for that matter, is that there will be lots of emissions involved in the production of the EV itself or the sustainable product that we want to produce at the end of the day. I think I'm going to answer that in part. Number one is about the EV itself. So there are lots of questions about, oh, how about the EV that I'm going to drive when the power that powers it actually is run from coal or for oil and gas, for example, not from fossil fuels. Well, studies suggest that along its life cycle, the EV will have less emission than the oil and gas or ICE vehicle. So in terms of the environmental impact of an EV, I think that's quite straightforward. I think along its lifetime of 5 to 8 years, I think you have emission reduction compared to if you use ICE. Secondly, in the production of EV itself, firstly in the mining sector, for example, we're talking about critical minerals in Indonesia and the Philippines, in Southeast Asia more broadly. There will be lots of emission being involved in the production of these critical minerals, of this precursor of batteries, precursor of EV. I think there won't be any other answer than strengthening our regulation, unfortunately. Because at the end of the day, people will have to make money out of this production, right? And they will cut corners wherever they can. It's just the nature of how we do our production. So strengthening our regulations, strengthening our policy, providing more incentives to this producer to use more sustainable means of production is definitely needed. I was privileged enough to sort of supported one of the battery materials production in Indonesia that promote net zero emission. It was very, very hard. I remember working in that project, supporting my clients. It was very hard because the capex of that, the capital cost to do that is so high. It's so high that it almost doesn't make any sense. I did as well a separate studies on this when we talk about the GDP or the GDP that involves in energy transition. It's actually much less compared to if we go full fossil fuel in Southeast Asia, because we have lots of fossil fuels around here, especially in coal. So if we 100% switch from coal, from fossil fuel to renewable, actually the impact to the economy would be less. However, people doesn't price in the environmental impact of continuously using the fossil fuel. So we are yet to have an economic model that is implemented across Southeast Asia and actually price in the impact, the environmental impact of continuously using fossil fuel, continuously using ICE. So I think that this is the main problem that we have right now, is that people say, oh, if you want to go net zero, if I want to go sustainable in my production, it will cost more for me. Yes, it is, because you don't price in the environmental impact that will happen in your environment, in your country, in your region. And unfortunately, the current economic policy, the current financial policy that we have in Southeast Asia is yet to price that in. And this is part of the advocacy that we do, advocacy that people do in this space to ensure that the financial policy, the economic policy that we will have in the future actually price in the environmental impact. I remember, well, this is a bit off topic, but I remember, I think just a couple of weeks ago, the Indonesians were very happy when we have a corruption case actually. But the Attorney General, they put in the financial amount of the environmental impact to the case. So this is something that is very, very new. Whenever we talk about corruption case, for example, we talk about how much these actual people take from the government, from the people, from the country, right? But we never, until that case, to price in, to actually calculate the impact, the environmental impact of that corruption case, especially as the corruption case involves a mining industry. So this is something this is the direction that we are going. We want to price in this environmental impact into our policy, into our day-to-day life, even. So unless we can do that in a robust way, in a strengthened justice system, I would say, it would be very, very hard for us to actually limit or even to understand, to calculate the actual environmental impact of this.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer. We have questions from the floor for Mr. Fitra. Does the benefit of EV outweigh the cost? I think you have answered that indirectly, but maybe you want to answer it a bit more directly this time. Does the benefits of the EV outweigh the costs? And how do you use your EV for long trips where charging stations may not be sufficient in Indonesia, I guess? Yes.
So that's a very good question. But if you compare the cost of the running cost compared to the price of the car or depreciation of the car, it still cannot. I mean, I save a lot on fuel, but it just cannot compensate the depreciation of the car. But you have other advantages that cannot be measured by money by using EV. First, you contribute to the environment. And then the second is you just don't lose time and energy going to the petrol station and filling up the energy. You just leave the car at home, you plug the car, and then in the morning you have full energy. And then it's very convenient. It's very quiet. There's no vibration. And the power is just so good. And then the torque is instant. So you have many advantages over the ICE internal combustion engine. But if you compare money to money, the cost saving and the depreciation or the battery replacement, I don't think it can. I don't think it's you can compensate that with the cheap running cost. Not yet. But the other advantages makes me love electric car because it's so quiet, it's so comfortable, it's so practical. And many of my friends who bought EV for the first time, they replace that EV with another EV. So you need to experience. It's not about saving the earth, but electric vehicle also have its own advantages. Maybe not for the cost right now, but for other things that cannot be measured by money. And for the long trip, for the long trip, now in Indonesia, if you travel to the east from Jakarta, I think it will be very easy because in almost every rest area in Trans Java Highway, they already have a DC fast charging for the EV. So you just need to plan when you want to charge your EV, because it's DC fast charging, so it will only take about 30 to 45 minutes. It's the same amount like you take a rest or take a prayer or take a lunch. Then you can leave your car at the charging station, DC fast charging station. In 30 or 45 minutes, it will be full of energy, and then you just can run. I travel with EV from Jakarta to Bali last year, and yeah, you just need to synchronize your charging time with your rest time, so you don't feel like you're wasting time there.
Okay, thank you for that good advice. So I do have also another question from the floor, but for both speakers. So I'll start with Mr. Reza. Do you think the Indonesian electric motorcycles can expand their market within ASEAN and become a regional leader in electric motorcycles?
I think the short answer is yes. I think the electric two-wheeler market in Indonesia is still the biggest in the region, and there are lots of challenges of this new manufacturer to come into the Indonesian market, especially as the legacy manufacturer is yet to see any incentive for them to actually transition from ICE two-wheelers to electric two-wheelers. And there's definitely an early mover advantage for them to actually try to go into the other markets within the ASEAN region. Well, unfortunately, I'm not sure if you're asking me how. I'm not a business consultant, so I will not have an answer to that. But I think there are lots of opportunity for new manufacturer to compete with the legacy manufacturer. We've seen that in the electric four-wheelers. I think lots of people were thinking back in the days before 2020. I think I remember before 2020, I told one of my friends that I will buy EV one day, and they said to me, no way, there is no way you can afford an EV. And it was true back in the days. It was, I think, 2018, 2019. It was free. Like the cheapest you can buy is probably around 100K US dollar, and in ASEAN in Indonesia, that's a lot of money. But now you can buy it for much less, right? And that's what, 5, 6, 7 years. So God knows how the transport sector will look like in by 2030, for example. Well, it will depend highly on how this businesses see the opportunity in ASEAN. I'm not 100% familiar how it works in other markets, but in Indonesia, I think there are lots of local manufacturer involved as well. So they've got an advantage of developing the businesses locally, sourcing their productions locally, keeping costs low. And it might have an opportunity to be replicated in other ASEAN countries as well. So the also short answer is yes. There will be lots of government incentives need to be involved, but the businesses I think need to take the early mover advantage to take the market of ASEAN as well.
Okay, thank you. Pak
Yes.
Fitra, your take on the Indonesian electric motorcycle industry. Can this the sector become a regional leader in ASEAN?
I think yes, they have the potential to do that, but in the end of the day, they need people to buy the electric motorcycles. Otherwise, they cannot grow. But the problem with the electric motorcycle is really the technology of the battery is not there yet. They're still not durable, and the range is still very low. But with the government incentive, with the government regulation, we can do that. If we just leave the EV motorcycle like this, there's no many advantages of buying EV motorcycle, then it will be very hard. But for example, I went to Beijing last year, and I saw that the only motorcycle riding on the road, on the Beijing road, is electric motorcycles. And then I asked why. People love electric motorcycles that much in Beijing. I asked one of my colleague from Beijing, and then no, it's the government regulation. If you want to enter the city, you cannot use the internal combustion motorcycle. You need to use the electric motorcycle. It's hard, it's harsh, but you need to do that if you want to push the electric motorcycle. But on the other hand, manufacturer also have to bring the latest technology to their motorcycle, because now the battery and electric drive train technology in motorcycle is just not as good as the car yet. But yeah, maybe in recent year we have the more similar technology, but without the government support and the government regulation, I think it will be hard. We have the potential, but we need the government support for especially for the EV motorcycle.
Okay, great. So we have actually two more questions. So I'm just gonna go to two more questions and then we're gonna wrap up. Mr. Reza, there's a question on EV adoption. How would you encourage the people at the grassroots to make the switch to EV today in the current Indonesian economy? Do you think buyers should wait out for a few years before considering to make the switch? What is your take on that?
Okay. Good questions, by the way. So I'm gonna take both perspective here. I think first one from the perspective of the government and the manufacturer. My message would be there are limits to people altruism. So you cannot always bang on the altruistic nature of people to do the transition. Where if it not only in transport sector but also in sustainability transition as a whole, you cannot just market this vehicle, this EV, as something that will help the earth or solve climate change, for example. It might work to just a very small extent, unfortunately, because people use their altruism in other spaces as well, and I don't think people will work just on altruism altogether. So what the government and the manufacturer need to do is to actually market this as a solution of the current problem that people have in the transport sector. So as Mafitra said, it is not about um the feel, the vibrations of the engine as you drive an ICE, then it's the practicality or the torque of the electric motor, for example. But at the end of the day, you still have to buy into the people's ego, right? So you don't market this as something that is totally altruistic, totally that only helps the planet, but also you have to buy into people's ego on how they actually buy things, make it look cooler, have a good interior design, makes it look elegant, and so on and so forth. On the other side of the coin, from the perspective of the consumer, I think I'm gonna share my experience as I'm thinking actually now to transition to switch from ICE family car to a smaller EV for my daily use. I don't know if people should wait or should do it now. I think it would very dependent on how people use the vehicle in day-to-day life. But I remember talking to one of my good friends. He's a petrolhead as well. He watches Top Gear and F1 religiously. So he's a petrolhead by nature. So he told me, I think exactly as Bang Sita said earlier. I think people in the future will still use ICE as something that they drive on the weekend. But mostly for the workday, for people to commute, I think EV is something that you might wanna think about, at least wanna consider at least, because with the current financial incentives that the government gives, especially in Indonesia, I think it is actually very good. So I did the numbers because I'm actually thinking about purchasing a new vehicle for my family and then probably an EV. Remains to be seen, but probably an EV. It's in the equation. And when I compare it side to side in terms of the cost, the capex might be slightly higher, especially if you're talking about same model, same classes. It's a bit higher. But if you price in the OpEx of actually using your EV, it actually evens out. So well, in 3 to 5 years, I think when you use it, it's actually back to the same price. So whether you want to do the switch now or later, I think it's going to be very dependent on how you use your car. But I think the government and the manufacturer will have more play in this discussion on how they want the market to actually utilize or transition away from ICE to EV. I think I'll leave it to that.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to take the last question. So, Mr. Fitra will have the last word. So this is on EV as a correct solution. Do you think the EV is a correct solution in terms of our efforts in achieving the national net zero targets? Because currently, if we take a look at the EV landscape in Indonesia, it is mainly distributed in the metropolitan areas, whereas public transportation is the other options that we can pursue. Is it the correct intermediate midterm solution? What are the actions that should be pursued to evenly distribute the usage of EV across all parts of Indonesia?
In short, yes, it will significantly helping us reaching the goal. But it's tricky because in the end of the day, you need to sell the EV to the people. You need people to buy EV. That's the challenge. And now in Indonesia, it's growing. It's still on the big city like Jakarta, Surabaya, because the infrastructures are already there, and but I'm sure it will eventually go to other remote area of Indonesia. But the government need to take action, the manufacturer also, because the best part in this transition is being the customers, because we just have to wait until there's a product or there's a regulation that give us many advantages. Because if we think that there are many advantages for us to buy EV, we will buy EV. We will buy it now or we will buy it later. It depends, like Mr. Reza said, it depends on our condition, our situation. For the early adopter, for the people which has more money, they can make the switch now. But people with a limited amount of money, they can just wait maybe a little bit. The EV will become cheaper. And yes, we have to support the EV transition because it will help our Earth. It will reduce the consumption of the fossil energy. But as a customer, we just have to wait until the condition is just right for us, depending on our condition. And I think that the government all around the world, including in Indonesia and ASEAN, they work very hard to ensure that the EV transition goes as smoothly as they want. And but we cannot put we cannot put our vision sorry. We cannot assume that people will accept EV. We need to make the EV attractive to the people. That's also the challenge, but I think it will be done, maybe not in the 1 or 2 years, but eventually we will have more electric vehicle on the road compared to ICE, and we have a greener earth and better air to breathe in our country.
Thank you for that wonderful reminder to achieve a greener earth. So thank you. I would like to say thank you to the speakers and participants for your very active participation and also very creative questions. We have looked at ASEAN's blueprints and its plans to harmonize different regulations to support EV market growth here in the region. We've also taken a look at the potential ASEAN countries have in playing their part to promote EV growth and also EV adoption. We've also taken a look at the challenges that countries have faced, ASEAN is facing at a regional level, but also the sentiments on the ground in terms of prices and also uptake of EV in the near future. So thank you again to the speakers. Don't forget to check out our StratSea's article series, where the team have also launched their first report entitled Renewable Energy and Climate Crisis in Southeast Asia. And this can be found online on StratSea's website. They also have a few reports in the pipeline, including a report for investors on the processed food halal industry in Malaysia. The other reports will be on EV regulations and consumer sentiments in Indonesia, Indonesia's energy transition and renewable energy pathway to net zero emission by 2060, as well as Indonesia's halal tourism reports. So do watch this space for more info. Thank you, everyone. And there will be one more energy webinar on the 28th of February, a month from now. So do watch out our space for more information and for the posters as well. I am Juwita Mohammed signing off for now. Have a great weekend and see you next month. Bye-bye.